Where'd she go? Probably to shoot now. You're late.
You're brave.
You're late.
She's late, but she was here before all of us. Guess what? You guys about to laugh so hard.
Did you come here?
I was laughing all Saturday. Mason had to get his car back. Because his truck. His car was nicer.
Phones away, please. In your bag.
Are these notes?
We're doing notes.
We have notes today.
It was like the first time in like a long time.
I know, I've been trying to give you guys a break.
Huh? Just review. You didn't miss anything.
You missed the summative?
I need to get the elf is real.
That elf is real?
The elf.
I don't know.
My brother thinks it's fake.
I spelled my name wrong.
He's
I spelled your name wrong? Like your first name?
Like, forget
Okay, it's okay. Everybody have a paper? Okay. Today we are discussing automobiles, aka cars. I can get my thingy out. There we go. All right. The essential question is on the board. Please make sure you write it down so you don't lose points. It's an easy question today. How did automobiles affect America? All right. So the automobile industry was the most successful business in the 1920s. It made the most money, employed the most people, sold the most things. Okay? And the person who really excelled the automobile industry in the United States is Henry Ford. Henry Ford is from where I grew up, over in Detroit, in Michigan. Detroit is known as Motown because of Henry Ford and his Ford company. So Henry Ford led the way in affordable cars. Do you have one, Mikhail? Then you say, Miss King, I don't have one. Okay, he led the way in affordable cars. Affordable cars. Thank you. So, before Henry Ford came around, cars were extremely expensive. It took about 8 hours to put one together. One person. 1 or 2 people would put one car together, right? But Henry Ford invented the assembly line. Which allowed for quicker, more efficient production of his Model T cars, which are right here on the screen. That's what a Model T car is. So he starts with his Model A's, and he makes those like the Europeans are making their cars, slow. But then he thinks, how can we make this more efficient? Okay, so instead of 2 people putting together a whole car for 8 hours, one person stands next to another person, It comes down the line, you hand me.
It's been going on for like 10 more minutes.
What? Whose phone is that? It's not mine.
Anaya, check your phone. I think it's you.
Oh, shit.
Language.
Did you set an alarm?
Oh, shoot. All right. So, I didn't even hear that till you said that.
I heard it for She's been hearing. I thought I was going crazy.
All right. So, you take 2 parts. I put them together. I pass it to the next guy. Then I take those same 2 parts from the other person, put them together, hand it to the next guy. He takes that part. takes another part, puts it together, hands it to the next guy. That guy takes that part, another part, puts it together until the automobile is done. It went from an 8-hour process to a 45-minute process. Okay? How fast can you crank out cars if you're making one every 8 hours versus one every 45 minutes? Right? So that makes it more efficient. You can produce more cars, which means that more people can buy them. They're not as rare, right? So he made the production of the Model T. So if you didn't get that one, it's the Model T, just the letter T. Okay? Like just the letter T, not T-E-A, not a cup of tea. Okay? So because of this, he was able to, excuse me, he was able to make cars more available and more affordable. More available and more affordable. This allows the middle class to now be able to afford cars, okay? So pre-1920s, most people got around how? Horses. Horses and walking, okay? If you didn't have enough money to buy a horse, you were gonna walk. Only the richest of the rich had cars. There were actually, in the beginning, when cars first were invented, before there was a ton on the roads, there was a huge increase in people getting hit by cars. Children, mostly. Because what was not taught to children was look both ways. They didn't have that issue. Now we have crossing guards, we have crossing areas, right? It used to be they didn't really know whose fault it was when somebody hit somebody. Now whose fault is it if a car hits a person? Whose fault is it? The cars. 99% of the time. Okay? 99%, even if they are in the middle of the highway, okay? 99% of the time, it is the car's fault. The person driving a car has the responsibility to make sure that where they're driving is not blocked by anything, including people. Now, if someone decides to commit suicide by jumping out in front of a car and you have 0.0 seconds to react, then it's not your fault, right? And you probably won't get prosecuted if someone's walking aimlessly on the highway at midnight, right? That would be really hard to avoid hitting, right? But most of the time, if you're in town and someone's just walking across the street and if they hit you, you can sue, they can be prosecuted, right? They'll get in trouble. Back then, they weren't sure how to handle all that, so they started teaching kids to stay out of the street instead of, playing in it. Because you can stop a horse a lot faster than you can stop a car. Horses, running a horse at full speed doesn't normally happen. It does not happen for long periods of time. If you're riding a horse, it's chill. It's chill, right? Cars are going a lot faster, right? So soon, because of all this availability of cars for the middle class, most families owned a car. Most families owned a car. Okay? So you're going from nobody owning a car, everybody walking in horses, to owning a car. Why is this so significant in America? More significant than, say, in Europe. Have anyone ever been to Europe? What's the biggest difference between our towns and cities and areas and their towns and cities and areas?
Their towns and cities and areas are all squished together.
All squished together. Everything is squished together. When I was in England, I could walk to the movie theater, the grocery store, any restaurant I wanted, the train station, everything was within walking distance. Here, if you want to go to Colton's and you live in Waynesville, you're not walking there. That's not going to happen. It's not very far, but you're not going to walk there, right? It's just too far to walk. So you drive. It takes 3 minutes to drive there, but you got to drive, right? In America, you can drive for 10 hours and still be in the same state, right? You can drive in Texas for 10 hours and still be in Texas. It took me 6 hours to drive across England, the whole country, okay? It takes 3 days to drive across ours. So you can see why cars became super, super popular in America because everything is so much more spread out. They do eventually become popular in Europe, although most Europeans tend to walk everywhere they go.
Even now, can't you still see some people using buses?
Depends on the country, depends on the area, you know. It depends. But most people use cars or walk. Or the train. They have really good train systems over there and underground systems. Brennan. Let's wake up. Alright. So Ford does something kind of funny, which I thought was really interesting. He builds a city. So Henry Ford in 1926 built Fordlandia in the middle of the Amazon. Where is the Amazon? What country? What continent? South America. What country? Brazil. Brazil makes up most of South America. When in doubt, say Brazil. Right? It makes up most of South America. All right. So he goes to Brazil in the middle of the Amazon and builds Fordlandia. Why? Well, inside of the United States, there is a huge monopoly held on rubber. Why is rubber important for cars? Tires, correct. So it's costing Ford a lot of money to buy rubber from these monopolies, these people who are able to hike up the price of rubber to whatever they want because they don't have any competition, right? So he goes to the Amazon. Is that this one? No. So he goes to the Amazon and he finds out that there's a ton of rubber trees in the Amazon. So he builds this big city. The rest of the notes are going to be on Canvas. So he builds this big city. He puts in a library, schools, parks, grocery stores, homes, right? And he fills it with American managers and Brazilian workers. Okay? American managers and Brazilian workers. And there a ton of problems start happening in Fordlandia. Okay? The biggest one of the biggest ones being a revolt by the Brazilian workers over the food. The Brazilians do not like the food that Ford is providing to them. Ford has this idea of what a nutritious, good American diet looks like, and he tries to impose that onto the Brazilians. Brazilians don't like this food. They're not happy about it. Because remember, they're living in Fordlandia. They're living in what is essentially an American town. And they're not allowed to do what they do in Brazil, right? He also bans alcohol, prostitutes, and other things, gambling, things like that, that make the Brazilians upset. So they revolt. So between that and the advent of synthetic rubber, what does synthetic mean? Gabby, what does synthetic mean? Do you know? Mr. Kelly? Fake, artificial, right? So instead of going to the tree, see if you look up here, instead of going to the tree, carving some of the bark out and having the rubber go into there, then you add some other stuff, some spices to it, heat it up a little bit, cook it, mold it, turns into what we now know is like rubber, as tires. They now can make it synthetically. You don't need to harvest it from a tree. Okay? So between that and all the problems happening in Fordlandia with the Brazilians, he shuts Fordlandia down. The Ford Motor Company abandons Fordlandia without any of the rubber that they produced here going into a single Ford tire. So he built this whole city in the Amazon and got nothing out of it. Not one little bit of rubber went into a Ford tire.
Where did it go?
A Ford tire. What, Ava?
Any Ford tires?
Ford tire, yep. Okay. Fordlandia is still there today. If you can see on the left, that's a modern picture of one of the buildings in Fordlandia. At the top right, that's when it was modern, like when it was being made. So they would live in those little houses, they would work in all the factories, and stuff like that. Okay. Installment plans start to become super popular. Okay, in the 1920s, installment plans become popular. Especially as Americans begin borrowing and spending at increasing rates. So let's look at this this advertisement. It says, "Have fun with the Ford, pay while you play." What does that mean, Mr. Wilson? Pay while you play. What does that suggest? We're in installment plans. Do you have an idea? Brooke, what do you think? Pay while you play. What does that mean? What does pay while you play mean? Ava?
They're gonna be on the land, but while they're on the land, they're gonna be
It's
like
for buying a car.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I have no idea.
So they're purchasing a car
And they're paying it off.
and they're paying it off, right? They're taking out a loan. That's how a lot of people buy cars today, right? Take out a loan with an installment plan. So installment plans mean my car is worth, your car, I'm gonna buy your car for $1,000. So I'll give you $100 every month for 10 months. Okay, that's an installment plan. However, that doesn't give Ford a lot of money, right? Sure, you're buying the car from them, but they know they can make a little extra money because it's a little bit of a risk. I'm giving you this car, but you're not giving me all the money for this car. You're giving me $100. What if in 6 months you don't pay for the car and I'm still out money, right? So as a bit of a fallback, as a bit of a fee for letting you pay it more shortly, pay it in smaller increments over time, they charge what's called interest. So instead of paying $100 every month for 10 months, you pay $120 every month for 10 months, even though the car is only worth $1,000, right? I purchased my home for $240,000. By the time I finish paying off my home, I will have paid $350,000. Okay, I'm paying $100,000 in interest so that I can pay it off over 30 years instead of, I don't have $240,000 in my bank account. Most people don't, right? So I'm going to pay it off over a chunk of time. That's what an installment plan is. Okay? These installment plans create a huge cultural change. A huge cultural change. Because Americans are now having more leisure time, more time to enjoy fun activities, entertainment, things like that. Okay? They are no longer working, saving to buy something. They can go paycheck to paycheck and just give the companies $100 at a time. Mr. Kelly.
What's that one you just said?
Cultural change. Borrowing and spending.
Oh.
Installment plans. Okay. So, now that all these cars are on the road, what do we need?
Road.
Roads. So, the states begin creating more and more paved roads. More and more paved roads. If you look at the picture on the left, that's what roads used to look like. Horses have no problem going through that. They're like us. They pick up their feet and they pull a cart, and the cart's wheels are not pushing it, the horse is pulling it, right? A car, what pushes a car? The wheels. So what can happen? It gets stuck. There's nothing to pull it out. So often back then, cars would get stuck, horses would have to come, and horses would pull the car out of mud. Kind of counterproductive, right? You can't drive your car anywhere. What's the point of having a car? So the states start paving the roads. If you look on the right, that is a paved road, right? A lot easier for a car to get down. If you look at the tires of the old cars, look how small and skinny they are, right? Now tires are much wider. They cover much more surface area. They have a better grip, right? So even when you get stuck, 9 times out of 10 you can get out. But I mean, if you're like me, I've gotten my car stuck one too many times in ditches. I had to call a tow truck, not a horse. But they did get me out. One time, I was with my truck. I got stuck in like this deep of mud, and the tow truck put his hook underneath my bumper, and he was pulling, and then it just snapped. I was like, we're never getting my car out of here. It's just going to be a permanent fixture on the side of the road for the rest of his life. Eventually, we got it out after breaking my car, but we got it out. All right, so because of all the cars, the federal government, Brandon, the federal government started to give more money to the states. So financial aid started coming from the federal government. Okay? And in 1929, the Federal Highways Act helped lead the project of producing America's interstate highway system. Interstate highway system. Federal Highways Act, interstate highway system. So, before like the 1950s, 1960s, here's the US. Okay, let's see, like my Nana lived in Savannah, Georgia over here.
What was the last one?
Interstate highway system.
It's just highways.
Her husband, boyfriend at the time, my papa, was stationed in Fort Jackson. So she had to drive, AJ, shirt down please. She had to drive back roads, because there was no highway, back roads to Jackson, take about 5 hours. Then the government implements their interstate system. Their interstate systems go up and down, side to side. Now, Savannah to Jackson is a 2-hour trip instead of a 5-hour trip. You just hop on the highway and keep going. It used to be you have to go through every small town. You know Route 66? That was the route you took to get across the United States. It goes straight through Waynesville, right? You see it all the time. You know that old Route 66? Goes straight through Waynesville. You had to go through every small town to get to the other side of the country. Imagine how long that takes. Now you hop on a highway, you bypass all those, you can go 70 miles an hour instead of 25 and make it to the other side of the country in 3 days instead of, 6 or 7. Michaela?
What was the first one on the roads?
Paved roads? Is that it? So why after World War I, getting into other wars in Europe, what would prompt the U.S. government to input this highway system?
For faster troop movement.
Faster troop movement, that's exactly right. If someone's bombing California, we can get troops from Fort Stewart all the way over here to there pretty quick. You can't put a tank on a plane, right? There are very few planes that can take a tank, okay? What you can do is put it on a flatbed and drive it from here to here on an interstate. My husband's a truck driver for the military. So he's able to put a tank on his flatbed and drive it all the way to California where they need to blow up, I don't know, Russia, the Russians or the Chinese, whoever's attacking, right? So this helps with that. How does it help the economy? Stephanie, how does this interstate system help the economy? Less what?
Crashes?
Crashes?
I don't know.
No, not necessarily. AJ?
It could get more people in, like, it could bring more people to this area.
Jack?
It allows for goods to move from one place to another quicker.
Correct. It allows for things to, like, cars from Michigan can get down to Florida pretty quick, right? Potatoes from Idaho can get over to Maine pretty decently quick, right? We're able to trade a lot faster. Interstate, when you hear the word interstate, it means interstate, goes through different states, right? Odd numbers, so the interstate, like 70s, the odd numbers go across, the even numbers go up and down, right? Is that right? Yeah. Even up and down, odd cross side to side, okay? So Interstate 70 goes from, Georgia all the way up to Michigan, basically, okay? Up and down. Any questions about roads, automobiles, Fordlandia? All right, please finish your questions. Please finish your summary. Please make sure that your essential question is written down. Make sure your name and hour is on the top of the paper.
Summary is 4.
And turn it in. Yep, 4. Sorry, I know it cut off a little bit. 4 to 5 sentences for the summary, please. Alrighty, get her done.
That's it?
That's it for today.